We go live to Venezuela as the Congress Against Fascism continues. Let's listen to the statements of Diosdado Cabello.
And they took to the officials to a terrible thing in the School of Americas for teaching us to torture and murder our own people, and they didn't call them they didn't call fascism. It was democracy supported by the US imperialism. 40 years later, colleagues, we were at the National Assembly in Venezuela, and we delivered the corpses to mothers and relatives who have spent 40 years searching for their relatives who were missing and murdered. There was, here in Venezuela, we mourned those murdered, and they robbed even the corpses with the families there, and that was the terror that we experienced there. The world didn't call it as fascism, but actually they were fascists. It is a school that was developed by the US imperialism as a model of domination. And the summon that our brother president did at this Congress against fascism is on due time to give an answer to a movement that tries to silence the peoples, that tries to destroy the peoples, that tries to subdue the peoples, and that those elites be the ones ruling. And so we have and I think that one of the actions we must take, brothers, sisters, partners, is how to identify these terrorist, these fascist actions on time. And so we have to identify these actions on time. They give us signs. They gathered, and sometimes we believe that this is the way they do politics. Here in Venezuela, they have spent 40 years governing social democrats and social Christians, one worse than others, and we have listened to Russian partner from the. We have seen them. We have been suffering from these fascist actions, and sometimes we don't say anything, or even worse, we don't do anything, and sometimes we have witnessed fascist actions on other peoples, and we prefer to be silent. And I don't refer to those here, but to some other people. And so in other countries there are some realities in which fascism advances, and here in Venezuela we live through it because at the time of Commander Chavez arrived, took office in 1998, an election that he won against all forecasts, and Commander Chavez, during his campaign and during the rebellion, the uprisings on February 4, it has to do with he called there to a constitutional power, and so the Commander Chavez the first decree that he issued was to call to an assembly with the established powers, and so here fascists got an agreement on they did a pact of punto fijo, the on the punto fijo, and so they did a pact of punto fijo, referring to a locality, and that pact, that agreement was signed in New York with Mr. Rockefeller, and so he called the political parties at that time, and they signed the agreement there among them, and they never took into account the people. They excluded the people. And what is that? What is fascism do? What it doing? And so in the elections in 1998, just for us to place on time, the 43% of Venezuelans couldn't vote. They couldn't vote for two main reasons, or one main reason divided into two. They didn't have an ID card. The 43% of the population, half more or less, couldn't get their IDs because they were illiterate. They didn't know how to write or read. Elites ruled, and elites vote for themselves. So the other half that could deliver their IDs, they provided them some sheet of paper, and so with that document you could go to a bank, or you could get married, but you couldn't vote with it. So they excluded our people. They didn't have the right to elect their authorities, and so that's the way they make up for. And so at that time it appeared Chavez, and it appeared the people with him. And so from blows, a youngster from a town of Guarinas, who didn't belong to the elites, without any commitment with a financial group or a political group, he became the president of the republic. And so hatred hatred bursted out, and so a person from the people took office. So it was unforgivable for them, for those fascists. And so a humble person arriving to being president, it was unforgivable for them. So discrimination, hate is terrible. One can take it as with a smile, but we here, being the government, being the current government, if there was any partner who came up with the idea of going to a restaurant, that person was persecuted, even being from the government. So racism against our own people, all the phobias against the human being, they started to express their hate, their rage. And Commander Chavez, in the year 1999 to 2001, he hadn't defined the socialist character of the Bolivarian Revolution. He hadn't defined it yet. We were like in a kind of limbus, but they helped us when they tried to make a coup d'etat against the commander Chavez on April 11, 2002, and the people started to see the claws of fascism. They ruled 47 hours. They persecuted, murdered. They went with all their rage. They abrogated this constitution, making a coup d'etat. They said freedom, and there were. We heard voices in the stage. We love you, Pedro. Pedro was the one leading the coup d'etat, and so all public powers were abrogated. For what? For ruling the under this alleged democracy. This constitution, in the preamble, establishes that the people of Venezuela are exercising their rights, and under the example of our historical Simon Bolivar and the indigenous people forged with the purpose of refounding democratic, participatory and protagonist society in a state of federal justice, decentralized, consolidating the values of freedom, independence, peace, solidarity, welfare, territorial integrity, coexistence for this and future generations, securing the right to life, culture, education, social justice, equity, without discrimination or subordination whatsoever. And it boosts the peaceful cooperation with other nations in accordance with the principle of non-intervention on the internal affairs of other peoples, guarantee the democracy and the ecological equilibrium, and as common assets of humanity in the exercising their power, their authority, and represented by the National Assembly, decrees the following. This constitution. So in its preamble, it is enough to read this preamble and we realize that this is a constitution is with a high level of anti-fascism. So that's why they wanted to abrogate it. They went after our constitution for it. So let's see a video for locate ourselves for locate ourselves in which have been happening in Venezuela on these fascism acts. Viruses spreading through generations. live it. So we want Diosdado Cabello get out the carpets. So burst out all your rage. If there is, when we overthrow Chavez and they attacked. This is a message for all Chavistas. So you all have to kill all Chavista people. That's why, in that way, we are going to overthrow that damn government. So if you don't kill every one of them, you won't defeat them. It is like this in Venezuela. We are going to murder them all. There is they have been persecuting me and they told me I have to die. They won't deliver the power. We have to take them away by violence. We are just searching for an international coalition supported by the military groups of the region. On Saturday we are going to them.
Funcionan y yo les dije, hágale.
So we're seeing a video that is being shown by Diosdado Cabello of a summary of all the fascist attempts that have been carried out against Venezuela. As Diosdado Cabello said, that the means are the same, the looks might be different, the people might be different, but the root work of everything that fascism does is the same throughout the years. From the early 2000s to nowadays, we have seen all the different operations that have been carried out. On this video, we are seeing all these images that have been, everything that has happened from the first guarimbas to the attempted invasion from Colombia during the Trump administration to everything that happened right after the July 28th presidential elections this year. Of these acts of violence have been instigated by the far right, by the fascist far right, to try to bring down the Bolivarian revolution. Now we're seeing images of how fascism is also taking place around the world. In this case, we're seeing these very harsh images of everything that is happening under the Israeli Zionist regime in the town, against the people of Palestine in Gaza Strip, and also in the recent month the escalation of violence against the occupied West Bank, especially in the north, where over 40 people have already been killed in the West Bank, and in Gaza since last October nearly 41,000 Palestinians, mostly civilians, mostly women and children, have been murdered under this Zionist regime that is carrying out this genocide in the face of the whole world while they stand inactive. This is also something that has been condemned during this Congress, this World Congress Against Fascism, the inaction of the international community, and they have called to have strong presence to bring an end to this genocide taking place in Gaza.
This law of fascism, and so this law is against the fascism. So fascism, we must combat it and defeat it.
Was making reference to that is being discussed in Venezuela, a law against fascism to face it and bring the eventual defeat of fascism for the well-being of the people of the world. We are listening to the delegates gathered here in this World Congress against fascism, rallying chants saying that fascism will never be victorious.
But here in this Venezuela, that civilized opposition, because they call themselves the civilized Venezuelans, and they have burned down people alive, a boy and many of them. But that boy, Orlando Figuera, he was passing by, and they seem him as fascist because he was a poor and black boy. He had a curlier hair, and so he looked like a Chavista person, and in that way they murdered in several states, and they burned people alive. Is that making policy? This must be condemned by the whole community, by the whole international community, the whole world. Those acts must be condemned, and the world doesn't react like that because murderers are protected by the bad called by the bad called Kingdom of Spain. They are protected in Spain. The same criminals who burned down people alive. Well, I cannot say more. Today they met. The Spanish Congress met, and they gave a verdict related to the Venezuelan elections. So why do they meddle in the internal affairs of Venezuela? They don't have to meddle in the internal affairs of Venezuela. They think we are a colony of us. They think they are the empire, and we get rid of Spain long years ago, and we are going to get them off here. So we are sure that we will be counting on the support of the world for the non-intervention and freedom and the sovereignty of the peoples, because Venezuela is sovereign, and so the empire is the one massacring the children in Palestine. Is fascism. Fascism is the one revealing there. And so I am going to tell you something, brothers and sisters. In 2002, nothing of it could happen without media outlets. The Venezuelan TV channels and journals, nothing of it can be done without social media, which generate their truths in complying with their interests. And it's that we, with a cell phone, must struggle against it, to tell the world the truth of what's happening in the peoples. Any one of you could come here in Venezuela and tell Venezuela is already under the control of fascism. That some of you, brothers and sisters, the international delegates, have seen any of it in Venezuela? No. Here there is peace, freedom. There's peace, freedom, and it has not been easy to achieve it. And we thank you, because each time one of you come to for the world and say that here there is peace and freedom, it is triumphing the truth, and we are fighting off fascism. And I am going to tell you something. We have seen some things, but I think that fascism is a coward, and so it is terrified by the people, by workers. Fascism is afraid of popular organizations. Fascism is afraid of those peoples who decide to be free. Fascism is frightened by the unity of the peoples without, regardless the presidents who are ruling. It is a fight that is good. It's good to wage that battle for our grandsons, granddaughters, and sons and daughters don't have to wage it. To date, in all fronts, of course, fascism has the imperialism, colonialism, and its lackeys, its subdued lackeys. People that won't tell of how come this statement is out, which is the reason why. And the fundamental reason is that imperialism knows something about them, and so they are being pressed, they are being bribed and blackmailed, and so they forget about their historical battles and they attack the peoples who decide to be free. And so the best combination of this is when there is a people and a government aligned with the people. Here in Venezuela, we have a people who wants to be free and a government that is free and sovereign, that fights alongside its people. There are not two battles divide. So fascism disguises. Fascism disguises. So hides. Fascism hides till it blows. So that's why we have to identify it on due time to prevent it with denunciations, with evidence. Fascism is expert on lies. We are being accused of everything here in Venezuela, of things that they are capable of doing, of things that God once says, God, where this come from? I want to alert you, there's a fake positive underway regarding drugs. If they grabbed an aircraft that coming from Venezuela, but the headlines say that yesterday the Brazilian Air Force captured a helicopter from Venezuela. It's not from Venezuela, it's from drug dealers, and the biggest drug smugglers are the US imperialism, but the bad guys are the Venezuelans. For Venezuela doesn't produce drugs. More than 80 tons of drugs has been seized here in Venezuela, but the narrative for the world is that the dictator, we have seen that movie, of course, the dictators who used the territory for destabilizing the regions for drug trafficking or money laundering. We don't destabilize anyone. We don't so a penny that enters in Venezuela is invested for the people. So we invest on the people always. And there is a thing that they called the Bolivarian air, Bolivarian wind, and the Bolivarian wind is the wind of Martí Allende, is the wind of freedom. All of it. Do you remember when everything was to blame Fidel Castro, and now it is the blame lies in Venezuela, in Maduro, in Chavez. With their lies, they won't defeat us. Be certain about it. Look, they have methods. How does fascism finance? With the NGOs, and they allocate money for it, and so they depend on the U.S. government or the European Union governments, who are lackeys of the U.S. imperialism. The NGOs, from there, they attack, generate campaigns, persecutions, make coup d'etats. They have their own methods. They are capable of becoming victims into attackers. Leopoldo Lopez is a self-claimed murderer, and today is a defender of human rights. What a cynicism! It is fascism acting. It is a great machinery in function of the people, in function of the elites. I am going to tell you something, an anecdote. I was in 2001. I was a minister and Commander Chavez told me to talk to provide a press briefing at the CTV channel, and there were the owners of all channels, and I was the only there, innocent, because we were very naive. But I admitted, and I already admitted it by that time, but we have tried to learn some things right now. And one of the owners of the TV channels, I asked them, "What's your problem? Are you bankrupt? Don't you generate resources?" Well, this is our best time. They responded me, and one of them, boasting about fascism. Maybe some of you know him. Told me, look, minister, the problem is that before I traveled to Mexico, and when I was departing, I called the Minister of Interior, and I told him I am departing to Mexico. And when I was at the airport, they expected me, and they treated me specially. And I told them when I was returning, they were expecting me, and they provided me a special treatment. And so now no one replied to me. No one treats me especially. So those are the privileges of that stupid elite that think that people can be manipulated. So we have come to today because privileges ended, and so fascism turned president. Peru a coup d'etat. The president of Peru is in jail, in prison, and the coup monger president, is recognized by countries, and no one asks her for tally sheets. And who asks the tally sheets to the King of Spain? Who? That they want to impose on us what they want, and here in Venezuela the people decide. In this country, in all the electoral process that have been conducted, and I have to say, never, I challenge everyone, never the electoral authority have polished minutes or tally sheets. The electoral council provides results. If I am a candidate and I feel those are not the results I claimed, and the plaintiff must present with the tally sheets to prove what he says. And so they appeared with those with the thing about tally sheets, because behind the tally sheets were a coup d'etat that is underway, and we are being threatened by the United States. In the presidential debate, they mentioned Venezuela. So fit your own problems, because you have enough problems. You have misery, social predicaments, 60 million poor people in the United States, and nobody cares about that in the United States. They have an electoral system which is a disaster, and no one tells anything. They just sort out everything by shillings. And so they want to meddle in the internal affairs of Venezuela, and they feel good about mentioning Venezuela and about meddling in Venezuela's affairs. So look, I am going to make a proposal. Pardon me if it is not the right time, but today in the world there's an international fascism. The fascists cooperate by their plans. They don't operate by themselves. Fascists work with people. They want to control the peoples. I want to make a proposal of making up an international movement against fascism in all places, in all countries, to debate on fascism, and we are not afraid, because we have the most powerful weapon, the truth. So those who have eyes see. Here, I propose it for being debated. Here we are going to resume. Thank you, Barners. We are going to resume each month. Each month we are going to resume those congresses made in 2019. In the upcoming November, we will have in October a congress, a national congress, and surely there are going to be certain guests. And in November we will make the Congress of the Youth and Students Against Fascism, because we have to sow, to cultivate, to boost for those youngsters to think in function that we are equal by law and by. So Bolivar used to say, equity established and practiced, established by laws and practiced by men and women of good. Without equity, there's no freedom. And here in Venezuela, and certainly in other countries, some people believe they are more equal than others. And I propose that to be discussed, and at the end of those 8-9 congresses, the women against fascism, workers against fascism, sex diversity against fascism, religious movements against fascism, and so then there will be coming a document, appearing a document. And while in Venezuela, I asked for support without any kind of fear, because this fight is your fight too, brothers and sisters. What's been happening here in Venezuela, they will face some difficulties. Maybe the U.S. imperialism entered, but it is like they are likely to enter, but the problem for them would be to go out from here, from Venezuela, to go out without being defeated, because we are not going to allow the U.S. imperialists to do what they like here in Venezuela. President Nicolás Maduro never hesitates. We are decided, we are determined, and I want to transmit it to you, to say it to you. That's why I am sad about some sister nations and for their divisions. It's enough for divisions. The enemy is not your neighbor country. The enemy is the U.S. imperialism. So let's make an effort for being apart from individualism, because when you will be dealing with fascism, you will realize it. Here in Venezuela, we are giving an answer. Pardon me, there's a detail. Fascism in Venezuela, pervert things, serious criminal things. They use minors here in Venezuela, and they put them with paper shields, and they were launched to the streets, and they offer them food, a pair of shoes to do that. We have the children's testimonies, and we have been denouncing that before the world, the use of children. They are so coward that they don't fight for themselves, and they send children. Children are not guilty of anything. The first obligation of all of us is that that children be happy. We cannot harm our children, and they, pardon me if I say it, there was a priest blessing the children who were sent to death. They are disguised. We have to recognize them. We have to recognize it. They are experts on damage and deceit. They harm and then they blame others. Most of all, the government in this case. We approved a law against hatred in the National Assembly, and it's been working. It's been working out against expressions of hate in the streets. Who protested against that law? The haters. Those who love impunity. Daniel told me lately his experience. We were talking about a partner. I was talking with a cousin because a little girl was attacked on social media by her own partners, her own peers, and they attacked her because of her dad was a revolutionary, and Danielle told her, but it was her first attack. first attack, and Daniela molds over and said, it mustn't be like that. No one can attack me. And Daniela and our sons are accustomed to those attacks, but Daniela reflected that this cannot be allowed. A single attack cannot be for any difference of social or any of our convictions. We must defend our convictions at peace. So the law against hate, and in April there was another law against fascism and similar expressions at the National Assembly, and in August it started the second debate with consultations on the streets. We don't approve here. We don't approve laws here, but we consulted the people. We by meetings and even in territories in which the opposition say they belong those territories. We opened websites for opinions, for recommendations, and that law is about to be approved. We are accused of everything because of that law. And after that, after 25 years of revolution, the first ones, plus the 40 years of the agreement of Punto Fijo and all governments, there's nothing that helps consolidate fascism as impunity. If fascist feels that he or she can act, and there's no justice, he or she will continue acting, every time with more hate, every time with more evil, and against who they act against their own people, their own group. For them it is common that in Argentina, the fascist who rules Argentina uses tear gas weapons, and all people be attacked. That is usual in fascism. They did it here, and that's why I say here in Venezuela there is a lab. Antonio Ledesma did it while he was a mayor, and he bought those equipment for repressing all people, the sick people who suffered kidney problems, and they launched water and tear gas, and they used to doing in Argentina, as Milei is claiming he's defending democracy. Which democracy he's talking about? I want to greet my sister Milagro Salas there in Argentina. As a supportive and heart, a supportive greeting from the bottom of my heart. And it happens in other peoples, but we have to raise our voices. And I propose that on December be the Communicational Congress against fascism for December, because if we have to prepare in communicating. For example, it seemed like in Chile Mapuches don't exist. Who talks about Mapuches? it seems, and they are being assaulted, they are being humiliated by the students of Pinochet, those who rule Chile right now. So give me an answer, a single answer, as Chavez used to say. I think in Brazil he said it, when we will be united in the whole Americas, we will be respected. In that moment, we will be respected, because if we are apart with our own projects, forgetting about the peoples, we will be eaten up by the imperialism. So let's make life hard for imperialism, so imperialism doesn't know the replies people are capable of answering. So ask them about what Vietnam did to them. Someone very close to them told them Venezuela is going to be 100 worse than Vietnam for you. 100 worse than Vietnam for you. Pay attention, like that today, on September 11, yesterday, it hurts. We see the images and there's a lot of frustration. We feel a lot of frustration. We picture the young guerrilla who were cut their hands off. Those who ruled Chile governed under the Pinochet constitution, and they refer to Venezuelan democracy. They criticize Venezuela. Venezuela is abided by this constitution. Article 5. I want to end my speech with this Article 5. Sovereignty. Article 5. Sovereignty lies in the people, who exercises like directly in the under the constitutional law by the electoral process of the public powers. And so we are going to build our own democratic participatory protagonist model, and we don't mind what the world says, but because we are determined to be free, and we will be free despite imperialism, fascism, haters, European Union, or the friends who betrayed us, but we are going to be free. Brothers and sisters, I really thank you to come here to participate in this Congress. I appreciate your presence here, and I ask you that this Congress doesn't end without a resolution to support the Palestinian people that have been massacred by Zionism, by the genocide, the most terrible genocide of these times. Our solidarity with the brothers and sisters of Palestinians, and our condemnation to the Zionism regime. Thank you very much. Long live homeland, long live Bolivar. Long live the great homeland. Hugs for you. Take care.
We were listening to the statements of Diosdado Cabello, the Minister of Interior, while he was addressing the World Congress against Fascism, and was explaining all the dangers of fascism and the ways attacking the world in a coordinated manner from the international community. That's why he called on all the peoples of the world to come together and carry out this struggle against fascism to make sure it doesn't win and it doesn't bring its devastating policies towards the people. He also called for a strong support for the Palestinian people against the fascist and the Nazi Zionist regime of Israel that is carrying out this genocide in Gaza, killing thousands of Palestinian civilians. Diosdado Cabello also called for the creation of an international movement against fascism, an international movement that is expected to meet periodically to to be able to come up with ideas and plans to fight against fascism. Stay tuned with teleSUR English for more updates in upcoming news briefs.